Thanks, Polly. Right, let's get into the details of this bombshell poll, this time for The Telegraph. I appreciate there are a lot of polls out saying many different things, but this one has been conducted by Savanta, and what it concludes, or at least it predicts, is that Labour will win a historic 516 seats. So that's the biggest, I think, majority for a governing party in all of political history in this country, while the Conservatives will be reduced to just 53. So that would be 3 seats ahead of the Liberal Democrats on 50. That's basically a Tory wipeout, or near enough. The poll predicts no seats for Reform, although, as we'll discuss later, other polling is saying that their vote share has increased. It suggests that Rishi Sunak will become the first Prime Minister in history to lose his seat in Richmond, North Yorkshire. It predicts a cabinet wipeout with the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, the main leadership contender, Penny Mordaunt, and Home Secretary James Cleverly, all set to lose their seats. Of the remaining Tories left, and don't forget that's just 53 of them, Kemi Badenoch appears to be the only contender, at least, to unite the right for the Tories. So the question I'm asking you this evening is, do you think Rishi Sunak deserves to lose his seat? Has the campaign for the Tories been that bad? I appreciate you may have mixed feelings about the Prime Minister, but losing his seat after everything he's been campaigning for in recent weeks, do get in touch. Leave me a comment at gbnews.com/your say with your views on that this evening, and we'll come back to that a little later. But first, we're joined by former Conservative Party leader, Lord Howard. Great to see you this evening. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Look, I appreciate, Lord Howard. There's been lots of polling. What we can conclude, even though there's variance in the results that they're predicting, is that all of them seem to be pretty dire for the Conservatives. We've had, I think, now 8 MRP polls, and they're all suggesting that it's going to be a form of Tory-geddon, with the Tories reduced to, in the most generous estimate, 150 seats. This one suggesting just 53.
Well, Camilla, I can only talk from my own experience. I've been on the doorstep every day this week, and apart from today, when I had a very positive response, on the other days, what's become clear is that there are very, very many people who haven't made up their minds, who are genuinely undecided. And I think the task that faces the Conservative Party in the 2 weeks that remain of the campaign is to persuade those people who haven't made up their minds that we have genuinely turned a corner. We've now got the lowest inflation rate in the G7, apart from Italy, the highest growth rate in the G7, apart from Canada, which is the same as ours. And after all of the hard times that we've been through because of COVID, because of the war, because of the increase in the price of energy, we have now turned a corner. We have a really good future ahead of us if we stick to the Conservatives and stick to the plan. That's what we've got to try and persuade people of in the 2 weeks that remain of the campaign.
I mean, to be fair to Rishi Sunak, he's been hitting the campaign trail and trying to suggest that this is exactly the message that he wants to communicate to the electorate, right? That you're safer with the Tories, you're less safe with Labour. He's been hammering home those different messages about tough economic times during the pandemic and because of the war in Ukraine, and how he's repaired things. He said, stick with me, trust me, better the devil you know. However, even though there may be encouraging mood music on the doorstep, Lord Howard, and I have heard that from some of your former Conservative colleagues, at the same time, these polls aren't moving. So what does he need to do? We've got 15 days left. What can Rishi Sunak do to narrow this poll?
Well, he needs to redouble, not just Rishi Sunak, but we all need to redouble our efforts to get the message across. And of course, the evidence on inflation is new evidence. It only came out this morning. It came out after all these polls that you're talking about were taken. So as the evidence increases that we really have turned a corner, that there really is a good future for our country if we stick with the plan and stick with the Conservatives, there is still time to persuade people that they shouldn't throw it all away and risk the higher taxes that inevitably will come with a Labour government.
Some people have suggested, Lord Howard, that Rishi Sunak is playing Queensberry rules and he needs to take the gloves off. He needs to really start attacking Labour in these last 2 weeks, land some blows and really make the public afraid of the prospect of a Labour supermajority. Do you agree with that strategy? Because there's been attacks on reform and there's been a lot of restating of the Conservative legacy, but people don't seem to be listening. Should he just aim all of his attack fire at Keir Starmer now?
Well, I think he has been attacking Labour and he has been attacking Keir Starmer, pointing out Keir Starmer's flip-flops, someone you can't really have any confidence in because he's changed his mind so often. He's the man who told us Jeremy Corbyn would make a brilliant prime minister and admits that he wasn't telling the truth, admits that that wasn't what he really thought and says he only said it because he thought Labour would lose the last election. Now, we've been making all these points and there's still time for them to get home. So I think we certainly must continue to attack Labour, but we must attack other parties too, because the truth is that every vote that isn't a vote for the Conservatives will let a Labour government in.
Lord Howard, thank you very much indeed for joining me this evening.
Thank you, Camilla.
We're joined now by former Labour MP Sean Simon. Lovely to see you this evening. What's your reaction to this polling? Because, of course, it looks hugely positive, doesn't it? All of these MRP polls coming out in favour of a massive super majority for Labour, but then 516 seats. That's untrammelled power, isn't it? On the back of actually a vote share that doesn't represent more than half of the country. You could have Labour on 516 seats, and yet the majority of the country would have voted for other parties.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance that that's going to happen. I mean, we've had 5 of these MRP polls now, and they all show a comfortable majority for Labour. I don't think there are many people who don't think that Labour's going to win this election, including Rishi Sunak and Michael Howard and everybody in the Tory party. But there's wide variation between them in terms of how much Labour will win by. And this poll is a real outlier at the very extreme end, with an absurdly large majority. That's not going to happen. No chance. I
mean, it is quite surprising, isn't it, to be looking at numbers suggesting that kind of Labour supermajority when people largely agree that Keir Starmer isn't Blair. He hasn't got his personality or charisma. He's come unstuck a number of times on the campaign trail. I mean, he can't explain why on earth he decided to prop up Jeremy Corbyn for 4 years. He struggled to define what a woman is. He can't tell us who he'll tax, except that he won't tax working people. And yet he looks set to walk into number 10 with this massive supermajority on the back of not much personal poll rating approval.
It sounds like you're not a massive fan of Keir Starmer there.
I'm merely stating the other view to this idea that Labour should just waltz into number 10. I think I'm listing legitimate criticisms of Keir Starmer in the interests of balance. I'm hoping you'll give me the counter view, Sean.
Well, I'm going to agree with you on one level, which is that I don't think Keir Starmer or kind of Labour strategists, I don't think they would claim that he has been kind of acclaimed in the way that Blair was in the run-up to 97. I think Labour does understand that what's going on here is more about a national reaction to the catastrophic reign of chaos we've had under 14 years of the Conservatives than it is about a hugely warm affection for either Labour corporately or Keir Starmer personally. But I think what he and Labour have done is made themselves, and I think the polls demonstrate this, and let's be clear, not just polls, but umpteen by-elections, council elections, mayoral elections, lots and lots of real votes in real elections. They demonstrate that people do now feel that Labour is a credible opposition. They're sick of the Tories. They want to get the Tories out, and they feel that Labour is a reasonable, trustworthy, mainstream opposition that they can put their faith in to have a go. Must be better than this terrible Tory lot.
All right, Sean Simon, thank you very much indeed for joining me this evening. I'm joined now from Athens, would you believe, by pollster and academic Professor Matt Goodwin. Matt, first of all, your reaction to this Savanta poll. I mean, it seems to be a bit of an outlier because we've had other MRP polling which has forecast doom for the Tories. There's no doubt about that, but not this bad. 53 seats, Matt?
Sure. I mean, look, these are historic numbers, Camilla. I mean, it's difficult to know really what's accurate and what isn't at this stage. If we take a step back and look at all of the polling overall, then I think we can actually see a number of key themes coming out. One is the Conservative vote does seem to be imploding. The average Conservative support is down this week. It's lower than where it was at the beginning of the campaign. The second thing we can see is Reform are doing much better now than they were at the beginning of the election campaign. And the third thing we can see is Labour are holding on to these very big, impressive leads in the polling. A little bit of evidence that's coming down in some polls, but they're doing well.
So this Savanta poll suggests that Reform won't win any seats, but you've conducted polling with PeoplePolling, which suggests that actually Reform aren't doing too badly.
Well, exclusively for your show, Camilla, we've got a poll out today. It was in the field yesterday. This is about to drop on Twitter X, and I think it's going to cause a bit of a storm. Let me give you the headline numbers here. Labour, 35%, Reform, 24%, Conservatives, 15%, Lib Dems, 12%. Yeah, this is higher than the previous peak we've had for Reform with YouGov on 19. This is Reform going up to 24.
Wow.
Let me explain what I think is going on here, Camilla.
Okay.
This is a week where we've seen the Reform manifesto or contract release. This is a week where we've seen the leaders' debates, the snapshot poll suggesting people thought Nigel Farage won that debate. This is the week where we've seen front page coverage of Reform pretty much back to back in the national papers. And to be honest with you, if you look at all of the polling that we've had over the last week, the average Reform vote has been inching up in every poll that we've had. Every pollster, not just us, has had record high vote shares for Reform. Not this high, but they've had record highs. So look, I mean, when you're dealing with polls, Camilla, right, we take a single poll with a big dose of caution. We say this is where we think maybe things are. What I think is unquestionable, as I'm about to say in a piece I'm releasing online, is actually Nigel Farage and Reform have had a very good election campaign. And I think that is now beyond doubt. If these numbers are true, though, this is historic stuff. This is real history-making stuff.
All right, Matt, thank you very much indeed for that. Maybe Nigel Farage will end up being the actual leader of the opposition as opposed to just one in a metaphorical sense. Now, I need to read you out the other candidates who are standing in Richmond and Northallerton, which is Rishi Sunak's seat for the Conservatives. Jason Barnett is standing as an independent. Count Binface is, of course, standing for the Count Binface party. Daniel Callaghan is standing for the Liberal Democrats. Angie Campion is standing as an independent. Louise Dickens is for the Workers' Party of Britain. And Kevin Foster is for the Greens. And we have Rio Goldhammer for the Yorkshire Party and Nico Omilana, an independent. We've also got Brian Richmond, another independent, Sir Archibald Stanton, who's there for the Monster Raving Looting Party, Lee Taylor for Reform, and we've got Tom Wilson for Labour.